You have been thinking about time lately. Not the clock on the wall, not the calendar on the refrigerator. I mean, the deeper kind of time. The kind that moves through your chest at night when the house is quiet and you lie there wondering, is this it? Is this all there is left? My friend, I see you, and I want to sit with you for a moment today. Not to fix you, not to sell you something shiny, but to share something that was shared with me, passed down through voices older than any book you have ever read. Because the world around you has been lying to you about this season of your life. The world looks at your age and it sees a closing door. It sees a countdown. It sees someone who has already had their moment, already played their part, already used up whatever fire they were given. But that is a modern confusion. That is a very new and very foolish idea. The old ones, my people, the ones who walked before us, they did not see it that way. Not even close. My grandmother used to say, and I can still hear her voice, low and steady like wind through tall grass. She used to say, the tree does not apologize for its rings. Every ring is a year it survived something. Every ring is a year it survived something. She was not talking about trees. So today I want to share with you 5 truths, 5 old teachings about what this time in your life actually means. Not what the television tells you it means, not what the magazines say, not what the world says when it looks past you in the grocery store like you have already become invisible. The truth, the old truth. And by the end of our time together, I truly believe, that you will see this season of your life differently, not as a closing, but as something else entirely. Let us begin. The first truth. Modern people will tell you that slowing down is a sign that you are losing, that if you cannot keep the same pace you had at 35, at 45, at 50, then something is wrong with you, that you are falling behind, that you are diminishing. This is one of the most damaging lies the modern world tells. My grandfather, a man named Harold, though we called him by a name in our language that means steady water, he told me something when I was young and impatient and full of noise. He said, the river does not rush to reach the ocean. The river that rushes cuts too shallow. It is the slow river that carves the canyon. The slow river that carves the canyon. Think about the Grand Canyon for a moment. Think about what made it. Not a flood, not an explosion, not something fast and violent and loud. The Colorado River, steady, patient, moving at its own pace year after year, decade after decade, century after century. And what did it create? One of the most magnificent things on this earth. Your slowing down is not a loss of power, my friend. It is a deepening of it. When you were young, you ran. You had to run. Life demanded it. Raising children, building careers, paying the bills, keeping everyone alive. That kind of running takes everything you have. You could not afford to stop. You could not afford to look sideways. But the runner who sprints the whole race collapses before the finish. The elder who walks with intention, with presence, with eyes open, sees things the runner never sees. I knew a woman named Dorothy. She lived in New Mexico, not far from where my family has roots. She was 74 years old when I met her, and she had spent most of her 60s grieving the fact that she could not do what she used to do, could not garden as long, could not travel as far, could not stay up as late. She thought she was shrinking, but one afternoon she sat still long enough, truly still, for the first time in years, and she heard a mockingbird outside her window singing 4 different songs back to back. And she wept, not from sadness, from the realization that that bird had been singing outside her window for 10 years, and she had never once heard it. She told me later, I was not shrinking. I was finally getting quiet enough to hear my own life. You are not losing speed. You are gaining depth. That is the first truth. The second truth. Modern thinking says that your value comes from what you produce, from your output, from your usefulness to the economy, to the system, to the people around you. And when that production slows, when the children no longer need you the same way, when the career is behind you, when the body will not perform the way it once did, the modern world quietly suggests that your value is fading too. This is a poverty of understanding, a deep and tragic poverty. My grandmother, the same grandmother who told me about the tree and its rings, she lived to be 91 years old. In her last decade, she could not walk far. She could not cook the big meals she once made. She could not do what the world would call productive. But people came from 4 towns away to sit with her. They came and they sat in her kitchen and they drank tea and they talked. And when they left, something in them was different, settled, like something that had been out of place had been gently put back. I asked her once, I must have been about 12, I asked her, "Grandmother, why do all these people come to see you?" She looked at me for a long time, and then she said, "Because I have finally stopped being afraid of them. Because I have finally stopped being afraid of them." Do you understand what she meant? All her life, like most of us, she had been performing competence, performing strength, performing certainty, managing how she appeared, protecting herself. But by her 80s, she had been through enough that the performance fell away, and what was left was just her, real, present, unafraid. And people could feel it, like warmth from a fire. You do not need to explain fire, you just feel it. Your years have burned away the performance. What remains in you now, the real you, underneath all the roles you played, that is extraordinarily rare in this world. And people are hungry for it, whether they know it or not. You are not less valuable. You have become more purely yourself, and that is the rarest thing there is. Now, before I continue, before I share the third truth, which I believe is the most important one, I want to pause for just a moment. I have spent many years gathering these teachings, sitting with elders, listening, writing things down in the middle of the night so I would not forget. And some time ago, a number of people asked me to put it all together somewhere they could return to, not just watch once and forget, but hold in their hands, carry with them. So I wrote a book called The Native Way. It goes deeper than what we can cover here together. It carries the old teachings about healing, about strength, about how to live, and especially about how to move through this later season of life with your fire still burning. If you look at the screen right now, you will see a link or a small code you can scan that will take you directly to it. It is also in the description below this video. It is called The Native Way. And if what you are hearing today speaks to something in you, I believe it will speak to you there as well. Now, let us continue. The third truth. And this one the modern world gets most spectacularly wrong. Modern thinking says that your past is weight, that your losses, your regrets, your disappointments, your wounds, all the things that went wrong, all the things you cannot change, are a burden you carry, a heaviness that holds you back, that they are the reason you cannot fully live now. The old teaching says something completely different. My people have a concept, and I will try to translate it as faithfully as I can, for which there is no perfect word in English. It is something close to this, that everything a person has survived is not weight they carry. It is ground they stand on. Ground they stand on. Your losses did not hollow you out. They hollowed a space inside you, and that space is where wisdom lives now. That space is where compassion lives. That space is where the understanding lives that cannot be taught in any classroom, bought with any money, or found in any book, including mine. Only suffering teaches certain things. Only loss opens certain doors. I knew a man named George. He was 78 years old, and he lived in Montana. Small town, big mountains, the kind of cold that has opinions. George had lost a son at 42, a farming accident, one afternoon, and then everything was different. For years after, George believed that grief had broken something in him permanently, that he was less whole than he used to be. But when his granddaughter, 17 years old, going through something dark that teenagers sometimes go through, when she was at her lowest point, she did not go to her parents. She did not go to her friends. She drove 2 hours to sit in George's kitchen, and he knew exactly what to say. Not because he had read the right words, but because he had lived through his own darkness and come out the other side. He had something in him that could hold her pain without flinching, without trying to fix it too fast, without pretending it was smaller than it was. She told me years later that those conversations with George saved her life. That broken place in George, that was not a wound anymore. That was a door that someone else's light could come through. You are not damaged goods, my friend. Every hard thing you have survived is something solid under your feet right now. And the people around you, the young ones especially, they need someone who has stood on that kind of ground. They need you, not despite what you have been through. Because of it. The fourth truth. The modern world is terrified of endings. It turns its face away from them. It uses soft words and clinical words and busy words to avoid looking directly at the fact that this life is finite, that there is a last day, a last morning, a last breath. And because the modern world is afraid to look at this, it teaches you to be afraid of it too. But my grandmother, I keep returning to her because she earned my trust. My grandmother was the least afraid person I have ever known, and she had more reason to be afraid than most. She had buried a husband. She had buried 2 of her children. She had seen things that would break the ordinary heart. I asked her once how she was not afraid of dying. She looked at me like I had said something mildly foolish, which I had, and she said, I am not afraid of dying because I have been paying attention to living. The one who has not really lived, that one has reason to be afraid. I am not afraid of dying because I have been paying attention to living. This is a teaching I have turned over in my hands for 40 years, because what she was saying beneath the words is that the fear of the end is often really the fear that we missed the middle, that we were so busy surviving that we never truly arrived into our own lives, that we rushed past all of it, the ordinary mornings, the slow meals, the unremarkable conversations that were, in fact, the whole thing. And here is the gift that this season of your life offers, if you are willing to receive it. You have time now, not infinite time, but conscious time. Time that you know the value of in a way a young person simply cannot. The young do not know they are wealthy. They spend time like it is water from an endless well. You know better now. You know what a morning is worth. You know what a conversation with someone you love is worth. You know what a good meal eaten slowly and without distraction is worth. That knowledge is not morbid. It is not dark. It is the most alive you can possibly be. A woman named Evelyn, 71, from Oregon, a retired school teacher who had spent decades putting everyone else's needs before her own, came to one of our gatherings a few years ago. She sat in the back, quiet, a little guarded. By the end of the second day, she stood up and said something I've never forgotten. She said, I spent 60 years waiting for my real life to begin. And I just realized this morning, sitting outside, watching the fog lift off the valley, that it was always happening. It never was not happening. It was always happening. My friend, your life is happening right now. This breath, this moment. This is not the waiting room. This is the room. The awareness of your own mortality is not a shadow over your life. It is a lantern inside it. Let it illuminate everything. The fifth truth, and this is perhaps the one that surprises people most. Modern thinking says that aging is a solo journey into irrelevance, that as you get older, your circle shrinks by necessity, by loss, by the natural drift of things, and that this shrinking is only a sadness, only a loss. The old teaching says that the shrinking of the circle is not a loss at all. It is a refinement. When you are young, you need many people. You need a wide world. You need dozens of relationships because you are still figuring out who you are. You are trying on different versions of yourself against different kinds of people. You need the friction. You need the crowd. But the elder does not need the crowd. My grandfather, Steadywater, he had in his last years perhaps 6 or 7 people he spent real time with. Not 600, not 60, 6 or 7. And those 6 or 7 people, they knew him. Not the performance of him, not the useful version of him, or the strong version, or the capable version. They knew the whole thing. The tenderness and the stubbornness and the particular way he laughed at his own jokes, even when no one else did. And he knew them the same way. He told me once, "A fire with too much wood smokes and chokes. A fire with the right wood, just the right wood. That fire gives warmth and light and lasts through the night. A fire with the right wood lasts through the night. The relationships you have now, or the ones you are moving toward, as the unnecessary ones fall away, these are not lesser because they are fewer. They are more honest, more nourishing, more sustaining. And if you find yourself in this season with fewer people than you once had, I want to ask you to consider, with gentleness, with curiosity, whether what feels like loneliness might actually be something else. Might be the quiet before the right person arrives. Might be the space you finally have to know your own company. Because knowing your own company, being comfortable in your own presence, at peace in your own silence, this is one of the greatest achievements of a human life. Most people never get there. Most people fill every silence with noise because they are afraid of what they might hear. You have earned the silence. You have earned the small, true circle. And a single person who truly sees you, truly, is worth more than 1,000 who only see the surface. I knew a man named Thomas, 76, from Arizona, who had lost most of his old friendships over the years, moves, deaths, simply growing in different directions. He came to me once, a little ashamed, and said, "I used to know so many people. Now I have maybe 3 real friends. Is that enough?" I asked him, "Those 3 people, do they know who you really are?" He thought about it, and he smiled a little bit. He said, "Yes, they know everything." I said, "Thomas, most people die without 3 people who know everything. You are richer than you know. You are richer than you know." Now let me bring these 5 truths together, because separately, each one is meaningful, but together they form a complete picture, a picture of what your life can be, right now, in this season, not someday, not if things were different, not in spite of where you are, because of where you are. You have slowed down, and in slowing, you have deepened. You are carving the canyon now. Let the river run at its own pace. You have moved beyond the performance, and what remains is purely you. That authenticity is a fire that warms everyone who comes near it. Stop apologizing for it. Stop trying to replace it with the version of yourself you were at 30. You are standing on everything you have survived, not crushed beneath it. Every loss, every wound, every hard morning, it is ground under your feet. It is the reason people come to you. It is the door that lets the light through. You are finally paying attention, truly paying attention to the life that has been happening all along. The fog lifting, the mockingbirds singing, the particular quality of morning light through a certain window. These are not small things. These are everything. Do not miss them. And your circle has refined itself down to the real, the true, the sustaining. A small fire with the right wood, burning clean, burning long. My friend, I want to ask you something before we close. What if the best years of your life are not behind you? What if the most alive you have ever been is still possible? Not despite the lines on your face, not despite the slower mornings, not despite the losses and the changes and the ways that life looks different now than it once did. But because of all of it, the young oak is beautiful. I do not argue with that, but it is the ancient oak, the one that has stood through 100 storms, whose roots go deeper than anyone can see, whose branches have sheltered generations of birds and creatures and children playing underneath. It is that oak that stops you cold when you walk through the forest. It is that oak you put your hand on. It is that oak whose presence you feel. You are not a sapling anymore. You were never meant to stay a sapling. You are becoming something much older, much stronger, much more rooted. Do not grieve the sapling. Become the oak. I want to close with something my grandmother told me on one of the last afternoons I sat with her. She was in her late 80s. The light was coming through the window in that particular late afternoon way, golden and slow. She was looking at her hands, really looking at them, the way she sometimes did, and she said, without looking up, "When I was young, I thought the purpose of life was to arrive somewhere. I have been everywhere I am going to go now, and I see that I was wrong. The purpose was never to arrive. The purpose was to pay attention while you walked. The purpose was to pay attention while you walked. You are still walking, my friend. Right now, in this moment, you are still walking. Pay attention. The path is beautiful, and it is yours. If today's conversation reached something in you, something that needed to be reached, I would be grateful if you would share it with someone else who might need to hear it. An old friend, a brother or sister, someone in your life who has forgotten what season this really is. And if you have not yet joined this community, I want to invite you now. Subscribe to this channel. Come back. We gather here regularly. People who are done being in a hurry, who are ready to remember what they already know. We are not collecting viewers here. We are collecting people who remember. Leave me a comment below. Tell me, which of these 5 truths spoke to you most today? I read every word. I answer when I can. Your voice matters here. Walk gently, my friend. We will speak again soon.